My best friend Jake and I have known each other since freshman year of college. We've gone through everything together: breakups, internships, late-night runs for garbage fast food, and more hangovers than I can count. He's the closest thing I have to a brother. That's probably why I didn't hesitate when he asked me for a quick favor. His mom needed a ride across town. Her car was in the shop, and Jake had a meeting he couldn't miss. Simple enough. I said sure before he even finished explaining. I remembered meeting his mom once or twice during college. Her name was Sophia. At the time, I didn't pay much attention beyond a polite hello. But when I pulled into her driveway that afternoon and she walked out to greet me, I did a double take. Sophia didn't look like someone's mom. She was put together in a way that was more striking than flashy: sun-kissed hair, oversized sunglasses, a calm confidence in how she carried herself. She wore a long, light blue sundress, casual but elegant, and greeted me with a bright, relaxed smile that immediately made me feel like I was showing up to a date, not doing a favor. "You must be the hero of the day," she said as she slid into the passenger seat. "Just trying to earn my free coffee," I joked, immediately regretting it, trying too hard. But she laughed easily, genuinely. We started driving. She gave directions in a calm, clear voice, not bossy or rushed like most people do. We talked small things at first: weather, traffic, a little about what I did for work. She seemed interested in my job, even asking follow-ups, not the fake kind. I told her about my freelance projects and how business had been slow lately. She listened like it actually mattered. "You're talented," she said after I mentioned a photography project I'd done last year. "Jake showed me your photos. You really have an eye for it." I glanced over, surprised. He never told me that. "Well, we talk," she said, shrugging slightly. "Moms ask things. We notice stuff." Her tone wasn't flirty, not really. Just observant. But the way she looked at me lingered a beat longer than normal. She smiled again, then turned her gaze out the window. When we got to her destination, she unbuckled but didn't open the door right away. "Would you mind terribly picking me up in an hour or so? I'll pay you, of course." "No way," I said immediately. "I'm not an Uber. Just text me."
She grinned.
"I'll take that as a yes." When I picked her up later, she was waiting out front, sipping iced tea and waving like we were old friends. The second drive was looser. We joked more. She told me about the time she accidentally signed up for a hot yoga class thinking it was gentle stretching. Her storytelling had a rhythm, confident but self-aware. I was laughing more than I expected to. Back at her house, she lingered again before getting out. "You've been very kind. Let me know if you ever need a meal that isn't microwaved or ordered through an app." I shrugged, half laughing. "Sure, I'm always up for food." She didn't say anything to that, just nodded with a small smile and walked up her driveway. I didn't think much of it at the time. She was being nice. That's all. Right? The next day, Jake texted, "Hey, can you give my mom another ride?" Same deal. I said yes. We did this 3 more times over the next couple weeks. Each time, the drives stretched longer. She started suggesting scenic routes. At some point, she started bringing coffee. One for her, one for me. "You mentioned you liked it black with cinnamon, right?" she said once, and I had no memory of ever telling her that. The 3rd or 4th ride, she asked if I wanted to stop for lunch. My treat. Think of it as a thank you. We sat at a little Italian place tucked between 2 boutiques. She ordered wine. I didn't. Felt weird drinking during the day, but I noticed how her lips lingered on the rim of the glass. How she didn't break eye contact when I told her about my most embarrassing college moment. It felt like she was studying me. "You're different than Jake's usual friends," she said while poking at her salad. "Different good or different weird?" She smiled. "You actually listen." Later, in the car, she reached over during a red light to adjust my collar.
"There.
You always have this little fold." The touch was brief, but deliberate. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. About her. About how I felt seen when I was around her. It wasn't even the physical stuff, although yeah, she was beautiful. But it was the way she spoke, the way she made me feel interesting. It felt dangerous. I told myself I was reading too much into it. that I was being stupid. This was my best friend's mom. This was Sophia. This was just a few car rides and a few laughs. But I couldn't shake how much I looked forward to seeing her again. The next time I drove her, she wore perfume. A different scent, subtle, vanilla and citrus. Not overpowering, just noticeable. I have a confession, she said when we stopped for gas. I may have told Jake I had another appointment, so I could have you drive me again. I blinked. Wait, seriously? She smiled. Is that terrible? I laughed nervously. No, just unexpected. She stepped a little closer. I'm enjoying these drives. Aren't you?
I didn't know what to say.
My throat tightened. I just nodded. The silence after that was louder than any words. She changed the subject, asked about my family. I answered, but I couldn't focus. After I dropped her off, she leaned into the open car window and said, "You're good company." Then she touched my arm and walked away. I sat there for a full minute before driving off. That night, I got a text. "Sophia, thank you again. I always feel lighter after talking to you." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. I typed, "I enjoy it too," then deleted it. Then typed it again, added a smiley, deleted the smiley. Finally, I sent it. She didn't reply that night. But I knew it had started. Something was happening. Something neither of us was admitting. The next week, she asked me to help her pick up some garden supplies. Jake was busy again. We spent over 2 hours together that day.
Talking.
Laughing. At one point, she put her hand on my lower back to guide me past a crowd in the store. That single touch short-circuited my brain. As we loaded the car, she wiped sweat from her forehead and said, "You've officially earned dinner. My place. Tomorrow night." I hesitated. "Jake won't be there," she said quickly. "He's going out of town." I nodded slowly, pulse in my ears. "All right. Sure." That night, I barely slept. It was still technically just a favor. Still technically nothing. But it didn't feel that way anymore. And deep down, I think we both knew that. I showed up at her place just before 7. She answered the door in a soft, off-shoulder sweater and jeans, barefoot, a glass of wine in hand. The first thing she said was, "I was afraid you'd back out." I hadn't, but I'd thought about it. The walk from my car to her front door felt like it stretched for miles. I didn't know what the night would become. I just knew I couldn't stop myself. Dinner was already cooked. Chicken piccata, roasted vegetables, pasta. It smelled incredible. She poured me a glass of wine and told me to sit while she finished setting the table. Her house was warm, full of framed photos and candles, jazz playing low from a speaker somewhere. The vibe was casual, but intentional. We talked. We ate. She asked about my last relationship, and I told her more than I meant to. How it ended with silence and distance. How I stopped feeling like I mattered. She nodded through it all, not judging, just listening. "People think love is loud," she said, twirling her fork. "But sometimes, the silence is what kills you." She spoke like someone who had lived that. Asked if things were okay with her husband. She gave a small, bitter smile.
"He's more of a roommate now."
"We exist near each other, not with each other." There was a pause. "I'm sorry," I said.
"Don't be," she replied.
I let it happen. We moved to the couch with fresh drinks. I don't even remember how we ended up sitting so close, but I remember the electricity. Her bare foot brushed mine, and neither of us moved. At some point, she took a long sip of wine, set the glass down, and looked at me like she was weighing something. "You're not like other guys Jake brings around," she said softly. I exhaled, laughing under my breath. "You keep saying that, because it keeps being true." I looked at her, really looked. You're amazing. You know that, right?" She tilted her head, eyes on mine. "No one's told me that in years." The air between us tightened. I was fully aware of the weight of the moment. Her hand rested lightly on her thigh, fingers just inches from mine. I wanted to touch her. Every cell in my body said to do it, but I didn't move.
She did.
Her hand slid over, brushed mine, then held it. I didn't pull away. "You're not doing anything wrong," she whispered. "You're just being honest." I don't want to hurt anyone, I said. Her thumb traced a circle on my skin. Neither do I. We sat like that for what felt like forever. Then she stood up, said she needed to clear the dishes. I followed her into the kitchen. She was quiet, focused on stacking plates. I offered to help, but she said no, gently pushed me back into the living room. I waited, staring at the spot where her hand had touched mine. When she came back, she sat even closer. I think about you, she said. More than I should. I swallowed hard. Same. I know this is messy. I know the rules. I just don't care right now. She turned to me, and for a second, neither of us moved. Then she leaned in and kissed my cheek. Soft, deliberate. Her lips hovered there for a beat too long. When she pulled back, I turned my head, and our lips met, barely.
A spark.
Then more. The kiss deepened. I didn't stop it. Neither did she. We pulled apart slowly, eyes searching each other's faces for regret. But there wasn't any. Not yet. I should go, I said, my voice hoarse. She nodded, but didn't look away. I know. I didn't move. She didn't ask me to stay, but she didn't need to. The silence was a dare. My brain screamed to walk out, but my body was rooted. Eventually, I left.
Somehow.
Drove home in total silence. No music. Just my own heartbeat thudding in my ears. I didn't sleep that night. The next few days, we didn't speak. No texts. No rides. Just radio silence. I tried to tell myself it was good. A clean break. Nothing happened. Not really. Then Jake messaged me. Hey, my mom asked if you could give her another ride Thursday. You good? I stared at the text for a long time. I could have said no. Could have made up an excuse. But I didn't. Thursday came, and she got in my car like nothing had happened. She smiled, said hi, asked how my week was. For a few minutes, it felt normal. Then she reached for her bag and her fingers grazed mine. Accidentally. Maybe, but she didn't pull away. We drove in near silence after that. At the stoplight, she finally spoke. You've been quiet. I didn't know what to say. You regret it? I paused. I don't think so. Her gaze stayed forward. Me neither. That ride was the shortest one yet, but the tension was suffocating. The next week, we met again. This time it wasn't for a ride. She asked if I could help her carry some boxes down from the attic. She texted, I'll owe you dinner again. I knew exactly what I was walking into. When I arrived, she was in yoga pants and a tank top, hair pulled up, no makeup. Still stunning. Effortless. We barely made it through the box moving. The air was thick. Our hands kept brushing. At one point, she stood too close, reached over my head for a shelf, and I could feel her breath on my neck. I can't keep pretending this is nothing, she said finally, eyes locked on mine. I'm not pretending, I said. I think about you all the time. That was the moment we stopped pretending. The second kiss was hungrier. Less hesitation. Her hand slid up my back, mine into her hair. It was like something had broken open. I shouldn't have stayed. But I did. We didn't talk much after. Just laid there, breathing. Her fingers traced patterns on my chest like she was trying to memorize something. You're not going to disappear, are you? She asked.
No.
I meant it. I just didn't know what it meant yet. Over the next 2 weeks, we saw each other 3 more times. Always secret. Always with some excuse. The rush of it was addictive. The way she looked at me, touched me, how real it felt, it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. There was no guessing, no games. Just this raw, magnetic pull. And then came the guilt. Jake started asking weird questions. You good, man? You've been acting weird lately. I made up something about stress and deadlines. Sophia and I stopped texting. We only spoke in person.
She said it was safer that way.
I agreed. But it started to gnaw at me, how quickly it had gone from one spark to this full-blown secret. One night, she asked if I ever thought about stopping. All the time, I said. But you don't.
No.
Neither do I. That night, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. Not because I didn't want her, but because I didn't know where this was heading. She wasn't just my best friend's mom anymore. She was Sophia. A woman who laughed at my jokes, who remembered little things I said, who looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the world. But none of that changed what we were doing. Every time we were together, it felt more real. Every time we were apart, it felt more wrong. And I didn't know which one to believe anymore. It escalated faster than either of us admitted. What started with stolen moments turned into full afternoons. She began calling them coffee days, and we both knew what that really meant. Sometimes we wouldn't even talk much. We just needed to be near each other. It was like time froze when we were alone, and then spun out of control the second I left. I told myself it was temporary, that it would stop eventually. But it kept going, because neither of us wanted to let go. We'd cross another line, say it was the last, then find each other again days later. There was no plan, no rules anymore. Just impulse. One afternoon, she opened up more than she ever had before. Told me she felt invisible in her own house. That her husband hadn't touched her in months. That the only time she felt real was with me. I didn't say anything at first. I just listened. Because as much as I wanted to tell her everything would be okay, I knew I was part of the problem. But I also knew what she meant. Being around her had started to feel like the only part of my life that wasn't hollow. It wasn't about the excitement anymore. It was connection, familiarity, wanting. She remembered how I took my coffee. She noticed when I got a haircut. She asked how I was sleeping. None of it felt small. We weren't just sneaking around for the thrill. We were building something that neither of us could name. And maybe that made it worse. Jake invited me over for a game night one Friday. I almost said no. But I hadn't seen him in a while, and I needed to prove to myself that I could act normal. Sophia wouldn't be there. She was supposedly out of town visiting her sister. Or so I thought. When I walked in, she was standing in the kitchen, laughing with a glass of wine in her hand. My heart dropped. Her eyes met mine, and something flickered there. Not guilt. Not surprise.
Just calm.
Like she'd prepared for this. Didn't expect to see you, she said lightly, her tone smooth. I could say the same. Jake walked up behind her and handed me a beer. Glad you made it, man. We all sat around the table, playing cards, talking trash, acting like everything was fine. But the energy between her and me was razor thin. We avoided eye contact, but it was like everyone could feel it anyway. At one point, she reached across the table for a bowl of chips and her fingers brushed mine. That touch sent a jolt through me. I saw the corner of her mouth twitch upward. Later, Jake stepped out to take a call. She stood beside me in the hallway, close enough to smell her perfume. She didn't say anything for a long moment. You're good at pretending, she whispered. I'm dying inside. Her eyes didn't waver. Same. That night, I couldn't sleep again. Not because I regretted it, but because it had never felt more complicated. Jake was starting to notice my distance. The excuses weren't working anymore. And I started to feel like I was being split into two people. The one he knew and the one she wanted. I started turning down her invitations. Said I was busy. Said I had deadlines. She didn't push, but I could tell it hurt her. Her replies became shorter. Then stopped altogether. We didn't speak for 2 weeks. I thought space would fix it. That maybe I just needed time to clear my head. Then I saw her by accident at a grocery store of all places. She was standing in the wine aisle, staring at a bottle like it held all the answers. She looked up and saw me. Smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Hi, she said. Hey. A beat passed. She didn't move. Can we talk? She asked quietly. We sat in my car in silence for a long time before either of us spoke. I've missed you, she finally said. I've missed you too. I don't want this to be something we pretend didn't happen. I don't think I can pretend. She looked down at her hands. Then what are we doing? I didn't have an answer. Because nothing about this made sense. I just knew I didn't want it to end like this. With us sitting in a parking lot like strangers. I drove her home. We didn't touch. We didn't kiss. But when I dropped her off, she paused at the door. You're part of my life now, she said. Whether we like it or not. That line stuck with me for days. We slipped again, the following week. I wish I could say I held the line, but the second we were alone, everything came back. Her eyes, her voice, the way she looked at me like I was the only person in the world who understood her. That night was slower.
Softer.
It felt less like an affair and more like something we couldn't name. I think that scared us more than anything. Afterward, she lay beside me and asked, "Do you think I'm a bad person?" "No," I said without hesitation. "But I'm lying to my son. And I'm helping you do it." Neither of us said anything after that. The longer it went on, the harder it became to compartmentalize. Jake started to pick up on my hesitation, the dodged questions, the way I always had an excuse when he asked me to hang out. One night, he called me out. "You seeing someone?" I froze. "You've been weird for weeks," he said. "I'm not judging. Just talk to me." I wanted to tell him. So badly. But how do you say something like that? "No one's serious." I lied.
He nodded, seemed to buy it.
But the weight in my chest didn't lift. It just got heavier. I started keeping my phone on silent, avoiding her texts until late. My responses got shorter. I didn't mean to hurt her, I just didn't know how to keep living like that. One day, she messaged, "Tell me if I'm just something you'll regret later." I stared at the screen for 15 minutes before I replied. "I don't regret you. I regret the situation." She didn't answer. The silence between us stretched for days. Then a week. I thought maybe she'd let go. That maybe we were both trying to stop the right way. Then she called. Middle of the night. "I need to see you." Her voice cracked.
I didn't ask why.
I just got in the car. When I arrived, her eyes were red. She'd been crying. "He knows," she said. "Jake." She shook her head. "My husband. He found a message. Nothing direct, but enough." My heart dropped. "What did he say?" "Asked if I was in love with someone else." I didn't breathe. And I didn't lie. I sat down. The air was thick with things we couldn't fix. "What now?" I asked. "I don't know." She looked exhausted. Fragile. A different version of the woman I knew. "I don't regret it," she said softly. "But I don't know what I've done." Neither did I. It hit me then, this wasn't just a secret anymore. It was a fracture. A shift. We had changed something that couldn't be undone. It wasn't about being caught.
It was about what this meant now.
She rested her head on my shoulder. We didn't speak. For the first time, I realized how far we'd fallen. And how there was no way back to the start. The fallout wasn't dramatic at first. No screaming. No public breakdowns. Just a slow unraveling. She told me she was staying in the guest room. Her husband had stopped asking questions. There was distance now, controlled, polite, but undeniable. I could tell she didn't know if that made it easier or worse. He hadn't said he wanted a divorce. He hadn't said anything at all. And that silence felt like punishment. She started seeing me less. Not because she didn't want to, but because the guilt had finally caught up to her. She said she needed to focus on fixing things at home. I didn't argue. I understood. But that didn't make it easier when she pulled away. The ache sat in my chest like a stone. I kept waiting for some sort of closure, but it never came. Just occasional texts. Late at night. Always short. Always careful. "I miss you. I'm thinking about you. I'm sorry." One afternoon, I ran into Jake. He seemed lighter than usual. Said his parents were going to therapy. That things were weird, but maybe improving. I nodded and pretended to be surprised. He thanked me for being around during his mom's rough patch. Said it probably helped her more than I realized. I wanted to disappear. The weight of what I'd done wasn't sudden. It came in slow, relentless waves. It hit me when I walked past their house. When I saw a photo of Jake and his mom on his Instagram. When I imagined her sitting across from her husband at a dinner table in silence. This wasn't some fantasy anymore.
It wasn't romantic.
It was damage. Real, spreading, permanent. I had been a part of something that left a scar across an entire family. Weeks passed. Then months. I tried dating again. Nothing stuck. Every connection felt dull, like I was play acting. No one looked at me the way she had. No one made me feel like I mattered just by being in the room. Then one night, I got a message from her. "Can we talk?" Just once. I promise I won't make it complicated. I didn't respond right away. I paced for an hour. Thought of deleting it. But I didn't. I met her at a small park near her neighborhood. It was cold. She had a scarf wrapped around her neck, her hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked tired. Older. But still her.
Thank you for coming, she said.
I nodded, unsure what to say. I'm not here to start anything again, she said quickly. I just didn't want to leave it like that. She told me she and her husband were separating. Not because of what happened with me, but because they both knew it was over. That the foundation had cracked long before I ever showed up. I didn't know if that made me feel better or worse. I think I used you, she said. Not intentionally, but I did. You didn't use me, I said. I needed to feel something again. You reminded me I still existed. I let her speak. I didn't interrupt. She needed to say it all, and I needed to hear it. I never planned any of it, she continued. But I also never tried hard enough to stop it. Neither did I. She looked at me for a long time. You're a good person. You didn't deserve to carry this. I didn't respond.
I didn't know how to.
I'll always be grateful, she said. But we can't keep holding on to something that only survives in the shadows. I felt my throat tighten. There were 100 things I could have said, but I just nodded. I'm letting go, she said softly. I watched her walk away for the last time, not because I wanted her to, but because there was nothing left to hold on to. After that night, I started over.
Slowly.
I distanced myself from the past, even though it never really left. Jake moved away for grad school. We still text sometimes, but not like before. I carry that guilt with me in silence. I don't think I'll ever tell him. Not because I'm afraid, because it wouldn't help anyone now. It would only ruin something that's already done. I still think about her sometimes. Not with longing, not with regret. Just remembrance. Like an ache that flares up when the weather changes. She wasn't a mistake. She was a moment. A beautiful, terrible moment that taught me how thin the line is between feeling alive and burning everything down. I've learned to live with the silence. With the absence. I don't chase chaos anymore. I've learned to recognize the difference between connection and escape. And if I'm honest, I still carry pieces of her with me. Not as a wound. As a memory. Some stories don't need a second act. Some are meant to be left behind, in the quiet spaces between who we were and who we became after. I know now that love isn't always the answer. Sometimes, it's the question that undoes everything. And sometimes, surviving it is the only thing that proves you were ever really in it at all.